Hello there! In this video, we're going to talk about how to crochet a rain frog pen holder with a juicy booty. So here's what you need. One 5mm crochet hook, green acrylic yarn for the frog, medium weight, polyfill to stuff the frog with, 3 stitch markers, scissors, and a darning needle to sew in the tails, craft eyes, you can also replace this with black yarn, and then black yarn for the mouth. Let's get started. So here's the pattern to make one frog eye. You can pause here and read if you want to. I'll also demonstrate in the following video. Alright, to get started, take your crochet hook and the tail of your yarn and make a magic ring. You can slow down here if you like to see how a magic ring is done. Next, you're going to put 6 single crochets into that magic ring. So going slowly here, you'll want to do 1 single crochet and then 5 more into that circle. So that's number 2, and then number 3 single crochet, 4 single crochets, number 5 single crochet. It's a little tight here and you'll want to make sure your work is pulled pretty tight because you don't want gaps in your work. Okay, and that's number 6. Once you have 6, pull the tail of your yarn and pull it tight to close that loop. Row 2 is going to feel even tighter because you pulled row number 1 pretty tight, and with row 2 you'll want to do 6 increases into the single crochets in row 1. So here I'm putting a single crochet into the first stitch of row number 1, or round number 1. I should really be calling it round because it goes around in circles, but I'm just used to the word row, so yeah. Anyway, after that first stitch in row number 2, you'll want to mark it with a stitch marker because that's going to be the start of your rounds. Then the second single crochet, you'll want to put it into that same stitch, so that creates an increase. And now you're going to do that all the way around for round number 2. So 2 more single crochets in the second stitch, then 2 more in the following, and you'll want to do that 6 times to create 6 increases and 12 stitches in total by the end of your round. So we're at the last stitch, single crochet into that last stitch, and then another increase single crochet into the same stitch. So by the end of that stitch, it should look something like this. Now row number 3, undo your stitch marker and follow 1 single crochet and 1 increase 6 times. So here we're doing that first stitch, it's 1 single crochet, and remember to put your stitch marker back on. This is really important because you don't want to lose your spot. And then, okay, 1 increase into the second stitch. So putting in a single crochet in that second stitch, pull through, and then we're going to do another single crochet in that same stitch. So that's 1 single crochet and 1 increase for the first 2, and I'll meet you back here at the end. So we're here at the last stitch, and that's going to be 1 increase. So 2 single crochets into that same stitch. And now it's going to look like this. Starting row 4, 5, and 6, we want to build some height to this eye. So we're just going to follow 18 single crochets all around to add some height to the eye. So that's the first single crochet. And remember to put your stitch marker back on for every single row. We want to mark that first stitch of every row. So second single crochet, and then I'll meet you back here in a bit after row 4, 5, and 6. Alright, we're back at the end of row number 6. So that's 18 single crochets for row number 6, and it should look something like this. So a little dome shape for the frog eye. Now the next thing we're going to do is snip the yarn. So you want to pull the yarn a little and make sure you leave about 6 inches to the tail. That's around 15 centimeters, I believe. And then get your scissors and we will cut it around there. I'm just eyeballing it. I think it's around 15 centimeters. So let's cut that. And then you'll want to pull the yarn through. And just leave it for now. You don't have to sew it in because we'll merge that tail into our other eye when we have it completed. And now we're going to repeat everything that we just did and do the same thing for the other eye. Alright, I'll meet you back here in a bit. Okay, so we're back and we're really close to the end of row 6 now, doing that last single crochet just before the stitch marker. And now there you go, we have the second eye. And this time, instead of cutting the yarn and pulling through, we're going to connect the two eyes together. And again, I'll show the pattern right here. Please pause if you want to read through this. I'll also demonstrate. So don't worry if you don't read through all of it. So to connect the two eyes, we're going to do a chain 4, and that's going to be the distance between the two eyes. If you want it to be a little bit wider, just chain some extra chains. If you want it shorter, you want your frog eyes to be very close together, you can chain less than 4 chains. But overall, I think 4 is a good distance. Alright, so after the 4 chains, you're going to slip stitch into that stitch marker on the first eye you made. So undo the stitch marker and then slip stitch into that. Here I'm inserting my crochet hook from the inside towards the outside and then doing a yarn over and then pulling through all of the loops to make a slip stitch. So now your work is going to look something like this. What we want to do next is we're going to add a single crochet into the next stitch on eye 1. So we're going to rotate this slightly and then do the single crochet. So one thing to keep in mind here is that you'll want to make sure that you're crocheting the tail end of the first eye in between your stitches. So I'll show you how to do this. First, insert your hook into that next stitch. Yes, and hold your yarn properly. Yes, so right there. And then you'll want to make sure your tail is in the middle. Pull through your yarn and then pull through 2 loops. So it's just a normal single crochet, but with a tail in between. And then what you're going to do next is you're going to turn your work, and then we're going to make our way back into the second eye. We're just adding a bit of width here so that we add some volume to the body. So along that first chain, we're going to do 4 single crochets on that chain and make our way back to the second eye. Alright, so that's 4 single crochets along the chain done. And next we'll want to slip stitch into that last stitch of eye number 2, just like that. Then we're going to add 1 more single crochet in the next stitch before we turn our work again and then make our way back. So it's going to look something like this. There's a little bit of width along that chain now, it's not just one chain. And turn our work, we are going to work our way back. One thing to keep in mind is that we're not chaining 1 here. Okay, let's move on. I'll go ahead and show the pattern for the following rows to make the body, and pause if you need to read through it. The pattern here is pretty simple, but one thing to keep in mind is that there are some decreases here to pull in bigger gaps. After you turn your work, there should be 5 single crochets to get across to the other side of your frog, or to the other eye. Put 1 single crochet each in the row below, so 5 stitches in total to get to the other eye. After you do the 5 single crochets, continue with single crochets along the eye. So insert your crochet hook into that next stitch and do a single crochet. One thing to keep in mind is you want to make sure the tail end of that eye is crocheted into the middle. So now that we've single crocheted all the way around eye 1, and we're here where the bridge is, we're going to single crochet all the way across here and then around eye number 2 as well. So let's do that. And you're going to notice that this gap is pretty big because this is that chain 4 that we started with to connect eye 1 and eye 2. So what you can do here is do a decrease. So pull this tight and then find a hole here, insert your hook, pull through, and then find the next chain. So 1, 2, 3, 4. You can insert it here. It's 5. So that should be the slip stitch to connect eye 1 and 2. Insert your hook into that hole and pull through. just like a decrease here. So once you do that, you'll just want to single crochet all the way across to the stitch marker. So here we've reached the stitch marker that marks the beginning of the second eye. We're going to undo that and we won't have to put it back anymore. We're going to single crochet around that second eye as well and then mark a new beginning for our rows. So here if you do a single crochet directly into that next eye, you'll see the gap is pretty big. So instead of doing a single crochet, you can again do a decrease here. So find a hole to insert your hook in a previous stitch, pull through, and insert your hook into the first stitch of that second eye, and then pull through all 3 loops. So that closes the gap pretty well. And then what you want to do next is single crochet all around the second eye to finish off row number 9, and then we'll mark a new beginning for our rounds. Okay, so we've reached the end of the second eye as well. We've done single crochets and decreases all the way around. So there should be 42 stitches in that round. And then this is going to be the new beginning of our rounds as well. So to start off row number 10, as you can see, there's quite a big gap here as well. So we're going to do a decrease for that first stitch of row number 10. So yeah, right there into that stitch that I'm marking with my stitch marker right now. So that's going to be our first stitch, but to close off the gap, we're going to decrease into that stitch. So again, find a hole to insert your crochet hook, and then insert your crochet hook again into that first stitch, pull through so you have 3 loops on your hook, and then pull through all 3. So that's your first stitch now, and you'll make sure that you mark the first stitch with your stitch marker. Then this part is pretty simple. We've already connected the 2 eyes. There's a little bit of width to our body. Then we'll just want to continue single crochets all around for the next couple of rows. So here I've reached the end of row 15, and I'm just taking some time to sew in my tails. So use your darning needle and sew the tails of your eyes into your work. Okay, there we go. So we've sewn in all 3 tails of our eyes into our work, and you can trim this or you can leave it be because it'll just be inside your work. And then now we can keep going and continue the 42 single crochets up to row 18, and then row 19 will be 40 single crochets. Okay, I'll meet you back here when we're at row 19. So we're at row 19 and I just finished 40 single crochets. Now we're going to start building out the booty. If you want your frog body to be a bit longer, you can add a couple more rounds here and just keep doing 42 single crochets until you feel pretty good about the length. But here, yeah, the last round you want to do 40 single crochets, then mark that last stitch as the first stitch now for the next round. And then you can remove your original stitch marker. Here's the pattern for the booty part. This is going to be 2 parts, so this is the first part. Pause here if you want to read. Okay, so your work should look something like this now. It's going to start to take shape, and to start row 20, we'll want to put in 8 increases, 1 single crochet right in the middle of the booty, and then another 8 increases for the second cheek, and then put 24 single crochets along the front of the frog. To make things a little easier, you can count 17 stitches here just to mark the end of your booty, and then also count the 9th stitch. So right in the middle, that's going to be the valley of your cheeks. And yeah, you can put a stitch marker there as well. It's very important that that stitch is a single crochet because you want to create that gap right down the middle. Here we have the 8 increases. That completes the first cheek, or the beginning of the first cheek. And then we're going to do 1 single crochet right where the stitch marker is at. And it's easier to put your stitch marker back on because that's right down the middle, exactly where we want the gap between the cheeks. Then we want to continue with 8 increases. So here, after you put the last 2 increases into the last stitch marker, you'll want to mark the end of your second cheek again, right there. So keep the 3 stitch markers in place because it'll make it easier for you to count your stitches later on. Then continue with 24 single crochets down the front of your frog body. Once you finish the row, your work should look something like this. So you're going to start seeing the 2 flaps that are flaring out. Starting the next row, you'll want to follow 1 increase and 1 single crochet 8 times, and then 1 single crochet down that middle stitch marker, and then continue with 1 increase and 1 single crochet 8 times again around the other cheek. This time, once we reach the last stitch marker, we're not going to continue crocheting down the front of the body. We've reached the end of the row. Now you'll want to turn your work, single crochet into that first stitch, and then continue to single crochet all the way down. Here you want to make sure you're not chaining 1. We don't want that extra height here. So that's what it looks like after 1 single crochet. You're going to single crochet all the way down. Alright, so now we're here. We've reached the first stitch marker. We'll want to leave that one open. You don't want to single crochet into that because we're going to connect it with our work later. But here you can see we've got 24 single crochets. The 25th is that middle stitch marker, and then 23, another 23 on the other cheek. So leaving that first stitch marker stitch, turn your work again, and then we'll follow one single crochet, one decrease 15 times, and then 2 single crochets at the end. So here we've followed the one single crochet, one decrease pattern 15 times already. There are still 3 stitches from the row below. We're going to do 2 single crochets and then don't work into that last stitch. Okay, so leaving that last stitch unworked, we want to turn our work and then without chaining one again, single crochet into the first stitch and then make our way back. So 31 single crochets for this row. Once you finish 31 single crochets, leave that last stitch, turn your work, and then make your way back. Going into the second part of the booty, pause here to read. Once you turn your work, you'll want to do 1 single crochet into that first stitch and then 15 decreases. So we'll want to rapidly decrease to create that extra juicy booty. You can remove that middle stitch marker now. This is going to be the last row for our booty. Okay, so after you work your way through, I did 1 single crochet and 14 decreases at this point. Your work is going to look something like this. And I'm going to do that last decrease into the last 2 stitches, and then we're going to work this part, the cheeky part, back into our body. So here we're going to do 2 decreases along the side of the cheek and create a slope back to the front side of the frog. What you're going to do is insert your crochet hook into the side of the cheek and then yarn over, pull through. Then the next insert, you're going to put your crochet hook into the stitch that you left unworked in that next row, in the previous row, sorry. And then pull through all 3 loops. So that pulls your cheek together. And then you're going to do the same thing again. So insert your crochet hook into the side of your cheek, pull through, and then insert your crochet hook again into the single crochet in the previous rows, pull through, yarn over, and then pull through all 3 for that decrease. So now your work is going to look something like this. It's going to have that slope back into the front side of your frog. Then you'll want to continue 22 single crochets along the front side. So we finished our 22 single crochets and reached the stitch marker. Undo your stitch marker, and then very similar to that other side, we're going to do 3 decreases along the edge of this cheek to pull it together. So you'll see that it has a step kind of look along the side. You'll want to insert your crochet hook into the single crochet first, and then along the side, and then pull through, then pull your yarn through all 3 loops to create that first decrease. So again, the point here is to create that slope alongside the booty and then pull it tight against the front of your body. So I pull my work pretty tight when I'm making a plushie. So here I'm just using my darning needle to kind of loosen up that stitch. But you can also use a smaller crochet hook to pull your yarn through that very tight stitch before you put it on your original crochet hook. Just like that. And then you can continue your decrease stitch into the side of that cheek, pull through, and then again pull through all 3 loops and pull it tight so that it really pulls in your cheek. So here I'm just going to put my stitch marker back on, and it's going to go on that first decrease that we did to start off this row. After the 3 decreases, again, there should be a pretty tight slope on this side as well. Then you'll want to do 39 single crochets and then 1 decrease. So here we are after 39 single crochets. That last decrease is going to go into the last stitch and then also the stitch where your stitch marker is at. So we want to make sure before we start our next round that there are 42 stitches in total, because we're going to start decreasing to close out the bottom. So we want to make sure that it can be divided by 6. So 42 is a good number. So here we're doing that last decrease, and after that decrease you should count all the stitches and make sure there are 42. Then we're going to put that stitch marker on that last stitch, and then for row 27 we're going to do 5 single crochets and 1 decrease, and do that 6 times. Alright, we're doing this last decrease for row 27, then I will show the pattern to close out the bottom. So for the bottom, you'll want to decrease, pause and put in craft eyes, and also stuff the frog. Row 28, you'll want to do 4 single crochets and 1 decrease. Again, do it 6 times. here we're just doing that last decrease, so pull through all 3 loops and then pull the yarn a bit longer so that it doesn't get undone. And then what you're going to do is, if you have craft eyes, this is when you're going to put in the eyes. I actually got these for another project. I was going to make a teddy bear, but then I decided that the craft eyes didn't look good on them, so here they are. They're going to go on a frog instead. And these white plastic bits are what goes behind the craft eyes. So here, there's nothing special really. I'm just kind of eyeballing it where I want my eyes to go. If you want to be a bit more accurate, you can always count like how many rows you want from the top. But here I'm just eyeballing it because, yeah, it's pretty forgiving. If you want to move it, you can always pull it out and then put it in another spot. So adjust as needed. And then once you have it in a good spot, that's when you'll want to put on the white plastic bit that goes on the other side of your eyes. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. And then now I'm going to put the white plastic plates on. Actually, I'll show you what it looks like. So let me pull that out. So inside your work, you're going to just want to pop it on and then push it really tight. Okay, so I'm going to do that. It's a bit harder to put the eyes on when you're so far into your work, but I like to do this a little later just so I can see how it looks with an almost complete work. You can always do it sooner if you like. Okay, so it's going to look something like this. And then you're going to stuff your frog as well, because we're almost at the end. So let's stuff our frog. We'll be doing this in 2 parts, so stuff it as much as you can, but then once we're closer to the end, we'll stuff it again. You gotta make sure that you get stuffing into the booty just so you can see how juicy they look. Okay, so after you half stuff it, it's going to look something like this, and the booty is going to really take shape now. Then put your crochet hook back and we're going to finish off the bottom. Pause here if you want to read. For row 29, we're going to do 3 single crochets, 1 decrease, and do that 6 times. Alright, for row 30, we're going to do 2 single crochets, 1 decrease. Again, do it 6 times. Okay, we're here at the last decrease stitch, So we're going to do that for row 30, and then we'll get started on row 31. For row 31, we're going to do 1 single crochet, 1 decrease. Again, do it 6 times. We're here at the last decrease for row 31, so we're going to do that. And then now that we're a lot closer to finishing up our work, we're going to stuff our frog some more. Meowers is here to say hi. I'm sure there's some amount of cat hair inside this frog as well. Okay, so now that you stuffed your frog, it's going to look something like this. And on to row 32. So row 32, you're going to do 6 decreases, and the hole is going to start getting pretty small here, so make sure you have all the stuffing inside your frog at this point. After the 6 decreases, this is what your work should look like. So the hole in the middle is pretty small now. If you want to sneak in some more stuffing, you should do it now. Next, you can remove the stitch marker and do a slip stitch. Then we're going to cut our yarn and then pull through that yarn. I left about, I want to say 20 to 30 centimeters here. So I left it pretty long because we're going to use our darning needle to go around that very small circle and then pull it tight. So we'll want to weave the yarn around the circle here. Once you weave your yarn around the circle, pull it tight here and make sure you just close off that hole. Then you'll want to weave the tail end into your work as well. Here I like to weave the tail end through those bigger gaps at the bottom. So as you can see, there are some bigger gaps because we did decreases for the bottom and we didn't do any invisible decreases here. So the gaps are slightly bigger. So you'll just want to weave your tail end through those so that it hides it a little bit. After you've weaved your tail end into your work in a couple of different directions, you can go ahead and cut off that tail. And your work should look something like this now. So it should really have that frog shape. The last step, we're just going to use some black yarn to put in a mouth. And if you didn't put craft eyes in previously, you can sew in the eyes too. I think what I'm gonna do is put a smiley face right down the middle. So like a little triangle chevron type of smiley face here. So take some black yarn. I think 30 centimeters would do. You'd rather go longer than have yarn that's too short. So snip that off, 30 centimeters, and then thread it through your darning needle to get started. Okay, after you thread your yarn, you'll want to insert it from the back of your frog. And then it should exit out the front, like this. You'll want to leave a longer tail on the back of your frog as well. Then insert it from one side of the mouth. Have the exit be the same stitch as where your yarn first came out, like this. Pull through, and then from the other side, insert your yarn again, and this time exit out the same stitch from the back of your frog. So your work should look something like this now. So it's got the eyes, the mouth, and yeah, if you need to adjust, just pull the yarn out and do it again. Now here on the back of your frog, you want to tie the two tails together. I just did a very simple square knot, and that's good enough. Then you'll want to thread both tail ends into your darning needle. Then insert your darning needle into the same spot in the back of the frog and pull it out on the other side. You want to hide the tails inside your work. So pull your yarn through, and then your knot should be hidden inside your frog. Then you can go ahead and cut off the tail ends. And that's it. We finished our frog.